Could everyone please rise? Happy Monday, June 26th. This is a very happy day for me. Maybe not such a happy one for John. He's up here already laughing. No, it's a great day and a great way to end my tenure as your Rotary President with our First Lady, Marty Kemp. We're so excited to hear from you later today, along with Hannah Palmquist. But with that, we have a very special treat today. Dwight Andrews, where's Dwight, is over here. He will be playing our national anthem and will be accompanied by Trey Clegg. Many of you have seen Trey here over the past year as well. He will be accompanying him on piano, so we are in for a great musical treat. And I will turn it over to you two. Oh, and first you're going to do the invocation.
Hello, everyone. One slight program change. We're going to offer up a special, very brief patriotic medley this morning rather than the national anthem. But let us pray. Most merciful and gracious God, we call you by many different names and know you through your many signs and wonders, too numerous to be contained in a single word or even religious traditions. We gather here today from many different quarters and stations in life, from many different perspectives and experiences, but with one shared goal, to make the world a better place for all humankind. We invite your presence now as we fellowship and consider your work and the profound joy of servant leadership. You know better than we the challenges of doing good in a world that sometimes seems unfair and unjust. But give us the courage and the wisdom to use the many gifts and talents you have given us, that others might know of your eternal love and grace because of what we do in the here and now. Continue to direct us to new and creative solutions to the old and intractable problems. We know that we have not always been all that we can be, nor have we accomplished all that we need to accomplish in our world. Yet we are grateful for this day and this hour, and the possibilities that lie before us. We meet today nestled between two national holidays, Juneteenth and 4th of July. Help us connect our collective memory with the meaning of these events honestly and earnestly. As we expand our membership and bring new voices to our conversation, remind us to listen, and to listen with our hearts as well as with our heads. We are especially grateful this day for the gift of Stephanie Blank. Her steadfast, enthusiastic leadership has brought us a mighty long way. She has inspired us and led by example, and we are grateful. We pray that the Rotary continues to shine on as a beacon for this community for love and justice, integrity and moral courage. Give us the creativity and imagination to match our industry and discipline to make the world a better place in which to live. These and all other blessings we ask in your name. Amen. And now may we say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would you please be seated as we offer this patriotic medley? And as I grab my saxophone.
Wow, what a great way to start the meeting. So I'm going to ask that if we have any guests here today, please stand so that we can all recognize our guests. Do we have any guests? I know we have some. Thank you all for being here. Reminder to our members, please sign in. Your badge is the badge sign-in is now next to the badge board at the iPad station. And with that, I would like to start our new member introductions, and I get to start the first one. I am the lead sponsor for Kim Green, along with my co-sponsors, Milton Little and Chris Womack. If you all three could join me on the stage. Thank you. So I first met Kim as a mom to a mom. I got a phone call from a friend at Georgia Power saying that someone needed help with schools. Could I help? And I was glad to be able to help. In fact, Kim's daughter was in the same graduating class with my son Joshua, and they're now both living in New York together. Well, not together. Wait, let me clarify that. They are both living in New York. But that was my first impression of Kim, was as a mom trying to do the absolute best she could for her children. My second impression of Kim Green was at a United Way event. And I heard about her journey with United Way, how passionate she is about it, and how amazingly, eloquently, and convincingly she spoke about the importance of United Way. So I knew her as a volunteer. And now I am learning about Kim as an exceptional business leader here in the state of Georgia. We also share a common love of Tennessee orange. She is a native of Knoxville, Tennessee. I have a son who is a rising senior at the University of Tennessee. So we get to share that, go Vols, as well. But in 1991, she started her career at Southern Company as an engineer, designing equipment for fossil and nuclear power stations, including Plant Vogtle, so 1 and 2. Prior to that, she has held many roles. She's proud to have held many roles in Southern Company, including president of Southern Company Service, leading our utility operations as chief operating officer, and leading our natural gas business as chairman, president, and CEO of Southern Gas Company. And recently, she was named the leader of our largest utility as chairman, president of Georgia Power. So she has had quite the journey. I had the opportunity to sit with Kim on a trip down to Savannah the other day and listening to her talk about the utility industry, what is happening, what's happening at Hartsfield-Jackson. And she said, I know I'm kind of geeking out here, but it's truly fascinating. And I hope that Jennifer Dorian and John, you have her back as a speaker. It is exceptional what is going on in the utility world, and I'm thankful that we have Kim there. She, as I mentioned, was from Knoxville and got her Bachelor of Science from the University of Tennessee. She has a master's degree from the University of Alabama. I don't know what you do when they play each other. A master's degree from Samford, and completed the advanced management program at Harvard. But one of the things that you'll see on the screen is that Kim loves all genres of music, especially rock. And I asked her what her favorite concert that she probably ever went to was. Anybody want to guess? Probably not going to get it right. AC/DC. I love that about Kim. She is an avid volunteer in addition to everything she does from a professional standpoint. She's on the Georgia Research Alliance, Morehouse School of Medicine Board. She's been involved with United Way for years. She's a de Tocqueville member, and she is a recent appointee curator, along with me, to the Georgia Historical Society. So we are so thrilled to have Kim Green as our newest member, and I would be neglectful if I didn't also mention she's the proud mom of 2 daughters. So please join me in welcoming, along with my co-sponsors Milton Little and Chris Womack, Kim Green to our Rotary Club. The two leaving the stage aren't used to not being able to say anything. We now have another new member introduction of Shane O'Kelly. His lead sponsor is Alana Shepard, and she was joined by Jamie Shepard and David Debier.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be a sponsor for Shane O'Kelly. What a fabulous Irish name. And he's always smiling. Always. It's amazing. He was appointed to West Point, and he graduated with a degree in math economics, way above most of our pay grades, I think. And then he got an MBA from Harvard. He had several, well, he joined the Army and the cavalry, and he graduated from flight school, what do you call it, jumping? Airborne, as well as Ranger School. He arranged, what? Oh, all right, comrades. He rose to be a commander, and he had several deployments, and he says that being in the Army was one of his proudest achievements. He then joined several different corporations, and then finally Home Depot, where he rose to a vice president. And then HD Supply, where he became the CEO. It was part of Home Depot, then it spun off, and now it's back as a subsidiary. And so, as he says, always think of the orange apron and go to Home Depot when you have a need. And also HD Supply if you're in that workforce. So he and Allison have 3 boys. One's at Emory, one's at Georgia Tech, one's a middle schooler. They have a house on the Jersey, Maryland shore, and enjoy that a lot. But they like to travel to new places and do different things. He's an avid skier, having grown up in the Northeast, and he has a lot of interests. One of them, though, and one talent, is to make pizza from scratch. Now, I want to know if you can sail it. Can you? Oh, we need a demonstration one day here at Rotary. I don't know how many of us twirl the pizza crust. Probably not too many. But anyway, he's a great guy, and I hope that you'll introduce yourself to him at the meetings and get to know him. He's always smiling, and he'll make you smile too.
Welcome, Shane, to the Rotary Club of Atlanta. And with that, please enjoy your lunch, and we'll be back up shortly for some further excitement. This will be the last time I'm doing this, so I hope you will indulge me for a few moments. Thank you. So there's some people that I want to thank that are here today. Dave Moody, where are you? There's Dave Moody. Dave Moody gave me my first job at Rotary. He called me and said, I want you to be program chair. I said, what does that mean? He said, I don't know, but I trust you. And it was a wonderful year with Dave, who I consider a great friend. The next phone call I got a couple of years later was from Tommy Holder, who is, as I mentioned at a previous meeting, a bit like a big brother and a mentor all rolled into one. But Tommy called and he said, we voted on the next president. And I said, okay. And he said, it's you. And I said, ha, 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 what do you want, Tommy? He said, no, I'm serious, it's you. And I said, very funny, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll, And I could tell he's starting to get annoyed. Do you remember this? Yeah. And he said, Stephanie Blank, you know how Tommy talks. He said, I'm being serious. We voted and we voted on you. And I was like, I may have said a bad word. But I have a sticker, a magnet in my kitchen that I've had since about 2011. It says, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. This put me way out of my comfort zone to accept such an incredible position. But it has been one of the highlights of my life and one of the greatest honors to lead this club. And when Paul Harris founded Rotary in 1905, he envisioned it as an organization bringing together professionals from a variety of vocations to encourage community connections based on friendship and service. The Rotary Club of Atlanta, which was founded 110 years ago, 5 years later, no, more than 5. I can't do the math. This is why I'm not a math major. But afterwards was started as a way to help business grow. That changed when Ivan Allen and Bert Adams attended the Rotary International meeting in Buffalo. This momentous meeting changed its mission of Rotary from helping members build business to helping the community. And it adopted the now world-famous motto of service above self. That motto has been my North Star over the past year. Martin Luther King once said, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And I can never be what I ought to be until you are all you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of our humanity. So I know that for many of you, I have also pushed the club outside of its comfort zone. But I hope in the process that we have not only learned something, but that we have grown as a club. Now, we have stuck to a lot of the traditions as well. We've had some amazing people come and speak over the past year. Mayor Andre Dickens, Roger Goodell, CEO of the NFL, Carol Tomei, CEO of UPS, Ted Decker, CEO of the Home Depot, Senator Raphael Warnock, former Governor Nathan Deal, CEO of the Hallmark Channel, Wanya Lucas, CEO of Coke, James Quincy, CEO of Newell Rubbermaid Companies, Ravi Salagram, CEO of Small Business Stuckey's, Stephanie Stuckey, Georgia's Supreme Court former Head Justice David Namias, just to name a few, along with my personal favorite, the entire Blank Boys. But we've interspersed that with programs about what is happening in our world and in our community. Because whatever affects our world and our community ultimately impacts all of us, even in our businesses. We've also had a lot of accomplishments this year. We've introduced music from our neighboring Georgia State and Morehouse schools. We've opened a Zelle account where your guests now can pay directly when they come for lunch. We've updated our badge system, thanks to Tommy Holder. We've created a PR committee, thanks to Randall Kirsch, David Romer, and B. Perez. We have a Young Leaders Committee now as well. We had updated parking, thanks to John O'Neill. Thanks to Pat Upshaw Monteith and Dan Gordon, we reached over 100 women in the Rotary Club of Atlanta. And thanks to Catherine Kelly's hard work while she was president, we finally pushed into action an early learning initiative, which was led by Shan Cooper, Randall Kirsch, with a lot of help from Lauren Kuntz as well. All things to be proud of. And each president leaves their own mark. Clark had his Medici moments. Catherine has her early learning work. And I will probably go down in history as the one that forced you to talk at the tables. But the table talks taught us a lot about each other. And one of the highest compliments that I received this year was from a member who said, before I felt like I joined a professional organization, I knew it was good for business. But the table talks have introduced me to my fellow Rotarians. And he said, and now I feel like I belong to a club. And I loved that. So, as I mentioned earlier, this has been a great honor and one that I am so proud to have on my resume. And so, in pushing you and pushing all of us, I hope that we have grown together and will take these lessons forward. And I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. Between what is said but not really meant, and what is meant and not ever said, most of love is lost. And I would say friendship as well. That's from Khalil Gibran. I hope that within our club that we not only build business, but that we say what needs to be said, what we really mean, so that we always build love and friendship together, and in turn, build a stronger community. Thank you. So with that, I would like to invite Catherine Kelly to come to the stage. And as she's coming, along with John Yates, our incoming president, I want to take for a moment to thank my amazing team this year, starting with our treasurer, Kathy Waller. Kathy, can you stand? She's in the back. Our VP of Club Service, Gary Reedy. I'm not sure if Gary's here today. He may be traveling. District VP of International and District Service, Claire Sturck. Is Claire here today? She may be traveling as well. Vocational Community and Vocational Service VP, Keith Parker. Our Secretary, Wab Kadaba, he is here. Keith's here, Wab's here. Sergeant of Arms, Tom Chubb. Program Chair David Lewis, and our Membership Chair Pat Upshaw Monteith, who is also here. I had an A-list team, and I think it showed in this past year, so thank you all. And with that, I will turn it over to former President Catherine Kelly.
Thank you, Stephanie, and good afternoon, everyone. As board chair and past president, I have the honor on behalf of the entire club to say thank you to you, Stephanie, for your outstanding service and leadership of this club as our president this year. As you have just discussed, you have challenged us to tackle important issues as a forward-facing club. You have engaged us in that spirited dialogue, the table talk, that we so enjoyed. You have inspired us to come together and do good things for this city. And I know that we all will end this year feeling even better equipped to help lead the city that we are so proud to serve. So thank you for the heart and the soul and the energy that you have poured into this club this year as our fearless president and leader. We will miss you, and would like to present you this plaque and pin as a way of sharing our thanks for all that you have done to make us an even better club. Thank you, Stephanie.
Great Falcons colors. So with that, it is my great honor to be able to transfer the president's pin to your incoming president, who I know you will all be here to support. Oops. John Yates.
Stephanie, thank you. It's an honor to be here and be a member of this club and to be the incoming president. And Stephanie, you have left some big shoes for me to fill. I'm looking forward to your support and the support of everyone here. So thank you very much. It'd be a pleasure to serve you.
So we are going to get to you, First Lady. We just had a lot of business to do today. So before we wrap things up and move to our incredible speakers today, we do have a perfect attendance slide we're going to show, which is kind of funny. I actually have perfect attendance this year. So, but congratulations to all of you who had perfect attendance this year as well. Now, you're probably wondering, I know she missed a meeting, but you do get to make that up through volunteer activities, so I have that covered. And with that, I would like to bring to the stage for a very, very quick presentation our district club. I'm trying to find out where my notes are. And where is our district club president? George is right here. And George is going to make a presentation for a very special winner that we had here at the club.
Thank you, President Stephanie. The Rotary International President, at the beginning of our year, sent each district governor a print of a painting that her brother did for her entitled Imagine One's Dream. She asked each of the district governors to auction it off. We chose to do a lottery. For each $100 that was donated to Polio Plus, you had an opportunity to win the print. The print is framed by past district governor Al Lippard. So when we had the drawing at district conference, we had raised a little over $170,000 for Polio Plus. For each $100, so that's 1,700 people that had an opportunity to win the print. When we drew the name, Julia Houston of your club won the print. I want to take your notes.
Well, you won it.
It's numbered, and it's signed by their artist, Darren Jones.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So,
What a treat.
yeah. And here, let me give you a certificate.
All right.
Well, thank you, District Governor George,
Thank you.
for coming all the way down to deliver this present to Julia Houston. All right, as soon as the photos are over. So our speakers today. I'm going to start with Hannah Palmquist. Hannah is a graduate of Emory University who grew up in Becker, Minnesota, and knew from a fairly young age she wanted to be a prosecutor. And Hannah went on to become exactly that. She also went on to become the assistant DA in both DeKalb and Cobb counties, and in 2018, Hannah became the supervisor of the Cobb County Juvenile Unit, working with runaways and victims of human trafficking. In 2019, Georgia's Attorney General, Chris Carr, tapped Hannah to become the head of the newly created Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit. So we will hear from Hannah shortly. But joining her will be our First Lady, Marty Kemp. I have gotten to know the First Lady through my service on her Grace Commission. And I know two of the most important things to our First Lady are, one, being a mom to 3 amazing daughters, and 2, being the wife and partner to our Governor, Brian Kemp. I don't know how you've done all the traveling you've done lately, but we are so appreciative of you joining us here today. You're coming before your husband, by the way. She is a proud and fiercely loyal graduate of UGA and started her career at her family's travel agency before joining Governor Kemp's development and construction company. In addition to her work to end human trafficking, First Lady Kemp is also committed to supporting Georgia agriculture and the Georgia Grown program, promoting literacy and mental health, and advancing foster care and adoption reform initiatives. She is a busy lady, but is very passionate about the topic you're about to hear about, and will be interviewed today by our very own fellow Rotarian and CEO of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Donna Highland. So please join us on the stage.
Thank you both for being here, and thank you for the extraordinary work that you do. It's amazing. You know, at Children's, we see these kids and when they're rescued, and there's probably not many things more heartbreaking than to see what's happened to these kids. So thanks so much to both of you. So Marty, tell us, how did you get involved in human trafficking, and tell us a little bit about the Grace Commission.
It was an honor to be here today, thank you. I did not know I was beating my husband, so I'm glad I don't have to follow behind him, because that is a hard thing to do. But we learned about human trafficking when Brian was not even sworn into office in January of 2019. And the girls, we have 3 daughters, and so they're now 24, 22, and about to be 21. And we went up to the Atlantic Station, had a press conference on stop traffic, and it had 72 school buses, which represented the 3,600 kids that are taken in to trafficking a year just in Georgia. And I was just, blown away. We, campaigned for 2.5 years around the state and never heard of anything about it. And I understand when I learned about it, that I said I wanted it to be one of my initiatives, that, that we needed to talk about it. And it's an evil industry, and I understand why people don't want to talk about it, but I was going to do that. And so we formed the Grace Commission just to bring, and it stands for Georgians for Refuge, Action, Compassion, and Education, and just brought all the experts to the table because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We just needed to know what was going on, learn more about it, and then just to see what we needed to do about it. So that's how that was formed.
Well, and you and Governor Kemp did something very special. You created the first ever Georgia Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit. And so tell us about that unit and why was it necessary? This is for you.
Oh,
and
this
then
is
we're
for
going to
me?
go to
Oh,
Hannah.
okay.
Then we'll go to Hannah. You created it, and then we'll let the...
Well, we're huge supporters of law enforcement, and when Brian was running, he talked a lot about crime and the gang problem that we had, and several people laughed at him, and then now you're seeing on the news about every day the problems that we have. So it was very important to fund this position so that they could, definitely have the resources that they needed, the tools that they needed to go after these terrible individuals. So that was a priority from before he was elected.
So Hannah, you fight the bad guys, the really bad guys. Tell us a little bit about your unit.
So our unit, when it was first created, was 6 positions. We have investigators, analysts, we have a victim advocate dedicated to helping the children that we recover. And we're very grateful because every year it's grown since. We've been continually made a priority. So now we are 12 people. So in a matter of a few years, we've grown from 6 to 12. So every day we go out, we look for missing kids, we recover children, and we prosecute the people who buy and sell them.
So I think, this is such a horrible topic, I think, for almost everybody. Hannah, could you educate all of us about who the victims are and what often makes them vulnerable to the buyers, just that whole grooming process for the victims? And then I wish you'd talk a little bit about the perpetrators, because it takes both sellers and buyers.
The victims are really anyone. And when we talk about what makes a child or even an adult sometimes susceptible to being trafficked, it is any unmet need. So most of our children are actually in the foster care system. So a child who may be lonely, may have unstable housing, may be moved from place to place, what a trafficker knows how to do is how to manipulate. These are not kids who are being snatched from the park and sold into human trafficking, because if you go snatch a child from a park, what's going to happen? Somebody's going to call 911. There's going to be an Amber Alert. Instead, it's those kids who have some unmet need of love or attention, and the traffickers will reach out to them and pretend to fill that need. They'll say, I'll be your boyfriend, let's get married, I'll give you an apartment. They'll pretend to love them and care for them. That's the grooming process, and that's how they lure them into being trafficked. And then the buyers, they're anybody. Sometimes they're married, sometimes they have children. Sometimes we even see that they have children around the same age as the people that they're purchasing for sex. So I think it's important to know the buyers are anyone, and it's really happening everywhere in our state.
How do they find the victims to purchase?
Online advertisements. So it's a lot easier to find than you would think. So you think it's something secretive, you think it's this underworld or the dark web. It's not. If you go on a mainstream dating application, they don't expressly say it, but when you look at an advertisement, it's easy to understand what it is. It's often phrased as something like an escort advertisement. And then what traffickers will do that buyers, the experienced ones, understand is they will always post that the person is above the age of 18 so that the company running the website doesn't shut it down. So it'll look like an escort advertisement for someone who is 19, 20, 21, but oftentimes that is in fact a child. And the buyer will then respond to the advertisement and they'll meet up.
So when you prosecute, how do you prosecute the buyers and the purchasers?
That's something we focus a lot on. So historically, sellers were getting prosecuted and buyers weren't because it's harder to discover. They're in the child's life for a very short amount of time and they leave less evidence. So one of the things that we really focused on when we started the unit is how are we going to get these guys? How are we going to get buyers? And I'm happy to say that now the majority of the people we prosecute are buyers. So we've sent 18 traffickers to prison this year, so since January 1st, and most of those were buyers.
And, isn't that great? And Marty, I think I remember you saying that that's one of the greatest deterrents for buyers is their fear of being caught, and not only if they get caught, now they're being prosecuted, and it's my understanding it's now on your permanent record.
Absolutely.
And that's something you've done under Governor Kemp's administration.
So we passed 8 pieces of legislation that not only have helped the victims, and we had them be a part of, writing up that legislation, and not only being able to help them, but also to have harsher penalties and give them more tools to be able to prosecute. And I will give the legislature a shout out because they have passed all these pieces of legislation unanimously. All but one voted against it, but I think it was just a little misunderstanding about what
But you will never forgive that person.
But it is large support by the legislatures, and I really applaud them for being very active and passing that important legislation that has helped.
So Hannah, what's the hardest part about getting a conviction?
These cases are tough. They're tougher to prosecute than your ordinary cases, which I think speaks to why the unit needed to be created in the first place. We don't have cooperative witnesses or cooperative victims. If you think about it, if somebody goes and robs a gas station, the gas station clerk's going to tell police what happened. He's going to pick them out of a photo lineup. All the witnesses there, they have nothing to hide, so they're going to point at the guy. But when you have human trafficking, you have a victim who's been brainwashed, manipulated, may believe that she's in love with her trafficker, has been taught to distrust law enforcement, maybe believes that she'll be in trouble for her participation. And then when this event takes place at some seedy motel surrounded by other criminal activity, nobody wants to step forward and tell you what happened. So the greatest struggle is you don't have cooperative witnesses who will take the stand and tell the truth to the jury about what happened.
So tell us about some of your convictions and the rescues that you've been able to be part of and that you've led, actually.
So 18 so far this year. One recent that we're particularly proud of, and it's thanks to the 2019 statute, one of the many they passed in 2019 that increased the penalties. I had a man plead guilty to a life sentence, and that wasn't even a trial. He pled guilty to a life sentence without the victim even having to testify. He had trafficked her in Fulton and Cherokee County, and so he pled guilty in Fulton County, and then we brought him up to Cherokee to plead to a life sentence there, just for the principle of it. So we're particularly proud of that one. We're getting really strong sentences. Historically, it's been difficult to get judges to send buyers to prison because oftentimes, because the ads post the person as over 18, it's difficult to get a judge to say this person should go to prison. But recently in Cherokee County, I did get a buyer a prison sentence of 10 years and another one a prison sentence of 12 years, followed by decades of probation. And then these people will all, it's mandatory sex offender registry. Anytime that someone's convicted of human trafficking, it's mandatory sex offender registry. So I'm happy to say in Georgia, thanks to all of these changes, we have phenomenal statutes on the books for human trafficking. We really do.
And that's changed a lot under your and Brian's administration, so thank you. What are the ages?
We see a lot of teenagers. So when we are prosecuting these cases, oftentimes our victims are teenagers, but what we see when we look in their history is that oftentimes it looks like they were being trafficked for a very long period of time before it ever came to someone's attention. The most horrific instances I've seen are when you look in a child's history and there's indications that one of their own parents may have been selling them in their childhood, and that's how they were groomed into this life. So teenagers by the time we're prosecuting them, but we're trying to look at how do we intervene more quickly so it doesn't get to that point.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Sorry. I received an email a couple of weeks ago asking for help for an aunt that had adopted her niece because both the parents had trafficked their daughter. Excuse me, and the school teacher was helping. And it was just stories like that I hear that are just, people just don't even have any idea how really bad it is. So I feel like that talking about it has helped tremendously, and just having people come up and tell me their stories is really, really hard. But I just feel like luckily they feel like they can talk about it or they have somebody to go to. And that was my goal of all of this, was just to make sure that the perpetrators knew that they had to look over their back in Georgia because we're not tolerating this evil industry here. And then just to educate. And I love going to Rotaries because I've been to several around the state and they're so engaged. They turn their chairs around, they listen. And the best one was one of the ones in Noonan, and we just had a really big bust in Noonan. So it's making a difference, I hope.
Marty, I still remember the first Grace. Yes. The first Grace Commission meeting when you had a young lady speak who was in her 20s, but her father had trafficked her when she was 12. And her story, I mean, I was sobbing.
Yeah.
It was almost uncontrollable because when you heard the fact that the person that she should trust the most in her life had trafficked her, it was just overwhelming to
And
think
her
about.
dad's still a preacher.
It was horrible.
It's horrible.
Horrible. So I think we all have to be alert to this. One of the things that I know you've also done this last year is pass some legislation about in the gas stations, putting up signage. Talk a little bit about that. I know that was one of our planned questions, but I think that's so important. Either one of you, because that, identification for all of us. I know Delta, I don't know if there's anybody in the room for Delta, but Delta has done an amazing job of training all their flight attendants of what to look for and what to look for in these children that are being trafficked. And you've identified places where kids that are being trafficked are being taken and how to help them get help.
Well, it was interesting, a lot of information that is on the laws, on the books, but is not, businesses are not participating. And so we just made sure that the fine was a little stiffer to make sure that they post this information so that, it's just another education piece. And I'll let you speak to more of that. But I have a friend that travels the state and she goes by rest areas and she'll, let me know. She's like, it's not posted in here and it's supposed to be posted. A hotline or something that when they go in the restrooms by themselves, obviously, they can get the number. Well, some of the rest areas were posting them like right when you walk in the door. Well, I mean, how are they going to take a picture of that when their perpetrator is right behind? So it's just the little things that we've learned around the state just to make those differences, especially about the foster care parents. There was a loophole that they were not to be. I remember being in Savannah our first year and I had a detective come up and he's like, I need to talk to you. There's a loophole. I can't try this case in South Georgia because, the foster parents are protected. And I remember getting in the car and going, Brian, well, that cannot be true. And he goes, well, just find out more information. We literally had a conference call that Monday. And I was like, there's just no way that was real, and it was. And so that was another piece of legislation that we got passed. So I'm sorry to let you know.
So Rotary International has taken on this issue of human trafficking, and we have the World Cup coming to Atlanta in a couple of years. So and we know that big sport, especially big international sporting events, are just a boom for this horrible industry. What does the business community here? You have a lot of influencers and influential people in this room. What do we need to do?
Education. No matter what sort of business you're in, the people who work with you, work for you, they may see human trafficking and they may have an opportunity to observe it and to report it. So no matter what field it's in, we see it all the time, especially in the hotel industry. Employees are really in a position to be able to notice something and to call the police. So education is what we'd ask from the business community.
Well, thank you again, both. I think we have some time. We wanted to make sure we left some time for Q&A.
Katie. I'm Johnny on the spot. Well, no, actually, John will be Johnny on the spot, but I'll
speak loudly. First Lady, will you speak a little bit about two things? One is you read a book.
Oh, yes, I was going to mention that.
Also led toward this. And then second, we've spoken a lot about prosecution, but you've also spent a lot of time on survivors and providing support for survivors. So we'd love to hear your comments on that as well.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to mention that. Susan Norris wrote a book, and she has Rescuing Hope, a nonprofit, and she's also on the Grace Commission. And she wrote a book called Rescuing Hope, and I read it. I made Brian read it. It's a very difficult read, but it will help you understand how these individuals get into this life. And it was actually taken, she put it to one character, but it's true stories that happened to young girls in the Atlanta area and in the state of Georgia. So it is and if you need a copy of it, just let me know and I'm happy to get you one. But another part of, that victims needing help, so when they get rescued, they had nowhere to go. And so we are fixing to open our second receiving center. So it lets them come in, get the wraparound services that they need, and education. I mean, they've missed their childhood. So that has been, and my goal is at the end of this administration is to have a home or a receiving center in every, any region in all the regions of Georgia that need it.
One of the things before we go to Rod for the next question that I want to make the audience aware of, and this is happening nationally, is that victims are getting younger and younger and younger, though, babies. And I know that in one of the operations where there were some young women rescued, you had a 3-month-old, right?
They can certainly be all of ages, and a lot of times these crimes intersect with other crimes such as child molestation and other sex offenses, so there really isn't a limit to these crimes.
Rod.
My name is Ryan, and I'm the person in I basically represent a couple of sex trafficking victims, and I knew nothing about this prior to getting into it. I did other kind of litigation. But if you could handle this as directed to you specifically, talk to the audience about the significance of social media in terms of how it interfaces, how these kids get drawn out of their homes and are susceptible to being taken advantage of. Social media, please.
Social media is huge.
The question is around social media and how it's used by the pimps oftentimes to perpetrate and groom and cultivate their victims.
We haven't had a single case in 4 years that hasn't involved social media in some form. So most of the time, this is the way that kids are being recruited. And when parents ask, what can I do? The example I always give them is, would you leave your front door unlocked and just let anybody come in and out of your house talking to your child and interacting with your child and not monitor that? And they say, of course not. And I say, but when you hand them a phone or a laptop, that's exactly what you're doing. Your child can speak to anyone in the world when they have internet access. And a lot of people mistakenly think, oh, I'll block this website or that website because surely we're talking about the dark web or some very specific niche website. No, we're talking about Facebook, we're talking about Snapchat, Instagram. That's how a lot of kids are recruited. So really monitoring that online activity, but also just making sure that every child's needs are met. Because if a child is secure and loved and stable in the home, that is not as much of a draw to them when they receive that attention.
I had a question in the back, and then Bill.
There seems to be a tension between adoption and foster care and orphanages now. And it seems as if the government has gone to the side more of foster care but returning the child to their natural parents rather than orphanage ways of dealing with the problem of children. Could you talk about how that tension works out, and are you fighting that tension when you're doing the sex trafficking thing? The de-emphasis of orphanages and the difficulty of adoption seems to put foster care as the main way of dealing with these children, but the emphasis seems in foster care to return children to their birth families rather than to move them to orphanages. Would you speak to that?
So we see kids from group home settings. We see them coming in and out of foster care. We see them in their home environments. What I can speak to from my personal experience on our caseload is that of all of the many dozens of cases that I've prosecuted, I only had one victim who was victimized out of her home with a family present. Every other victim had been passed from home to home in the foster care system. So that's what I can speak to in the context of this, is that anytime stability isn't present, that's when children become vulnerable.
And our new, the new DFACS director is Candace Broach, who actually created the Grace Commission with me, and she is, very, very familiar with all of this, but also, I know it's when the circumstance is better for them to go back to the family, but if it's not, then, certainly we are very supportive of adoption in the process, and I'm wanting to work more on that as well. And that was part of the legislation for foster care parents, that we closed that loophole and, held them accountable as well.
Bill?
No, I know that Children's Health Care Lab is all in on behavioral health and mental health for children all over the state. So can you give us a little happy news about what is happening, the specific case maybe, when a child is under your care and psychology and counseling works to help the child?
Yeah, well, Dr. Stephen
I was
Messner.
going to say, we have
Yeah,
Dr. Stephen
Dr. Stephen
Can
Messner
you
is
stand
sitting
up,
right
Stephen?
there. And he has a whole team, and this is what they do. And so the kids, they have very comprehensive programs, all types of different services in our Stephanie V. Blank Center for Happy and Healthy Children. Intentionally named that to try to help kids see there's hope for them. And Dr. Messner, they just have a wide variety of team. They have, the stories, we have a facility dog. We have like 26 dogs that comfort people, but that dog and the stories of these kids that have been trafficked, you can imagine how distant they are, how they don't trust anybody, and the stories of them coming in and having people love them and care for them and show them there's a way and that they have hope, and then connecting with the centers that Marty's talking about. There are teams of people, thank goodness, that spend their life and their training on rescuing these kids and making sure that they have a future, and they have some amazing stories, thank goodness, in that program. So thank you to Dr. Messner and his team for what they do every day, because it is a really hard job.
So without demand, though, we wouldn't have this issue. So as much as we want to also work with the victims, what's being done to help with the buy side? And how can Rotarians really lean into that aspect of it? Because if we can eliminate the demand,
That's right.
we eliminate the problem.
So fortunately, in 2019, under one of the legislative pieces that our First Lady championed, buying is the same as selling. The same sentence can be received now in the state of Georgia for somebody who buys a child versus someone who sells a child. I also think, circling back to that education piece, education can be a fantastic deterrent when it comes to buying. So y'all recall we mentioned earlier, a lot of times people may not know that they're buying a child for sex. It may be a 15, 16, 17-year-old who appears as older and was advertised to be older. Under our statutes in the state of Georgia, that's not a defense. Lack of knowledge of age is not a defense. And the story we get time after time when we arrest these guys is they think it's a defense to say, well, I didn't know, I thought that she was 18. So educating people who would solicit these acts over the internet that if she turns out to be under 18, it's not a misdemeanor, it's human trafficking, and that's on you.
David Lewis will be our last question.
Well, you sort of asked part of my question, Stephanie, but let me ask the other part of it, which is, what would you like to see companies do? Because people use corporate credit cards, they pay for your services in ways that can be detected. So if you have your way, what would you like to see companies do, many of which are represented here, to try to stop the demand?
And how can they find the training as well?
So if you go on the governor's website, there is a 30-minute training that is very educational of what to look for, and I would challenge your employees. We created that, and Brian didn't require it or mandate it, but he just encouraged all the agencies in the state to take that. And so, I mean, you've got 85,000 employees. And so now a lot of the agencies in the state, in state government, require it, and that is part of their training. I know we have a lot of law enforcement, we're working on a law enforcement training as well, so they'll know what to look for. And it's in your everyday life that you may see something and call 911 and just have that gut feeling. If you're at, Publix or you're shopping or wherever and you see these, it just teaches you what to look for. And if you're wrong, that's fine. But I mean, can you imagine saving somebody's life? I mean, it would be unbelievable. So I would encourage everyone in here to take the training and encourage your employees to take it as well.
Well, please join me in thanking Hannah Palmquist and First Lady Marty Kemp and Donna Highland. Thank you.